This is a new one. We haven't done this before.
Yeah, we have.
With two people in one location while we're doing
With
the Zoom
5
thing.
people in one location
Oh,
with a single Yeti mic in
back
the
when this
middle.
meant something.
Back when we had principles.
Yeah, back when we did this good.
Dash constantly fiddling with the mic.
Well, yeah, because he couldn't lower his voice at all, so we had to put the mic across the room with the rest of us.
And then back up for the best remaster or port of 2022. I'm gonna come out
So
and
that's a
say
game
it.
that's remade, but then also a place where boats can go.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
he is correct. I think this is maybe the worst showing this category is ever going to have.
Mm.
It has been not the best year for remasters and ports. Not to say that it was not a good year of games, but just not a lot of really good remasters or ports coming out this year. But
We're
I
kind
would
of
like to
scraping
start.
the barrel now.
Yeah, and that's why my number three is Destroy All Humans 2 Reprobed. Um, they did a remastering of Destroy All Humans 1 and 2. The first one came out, I think, like last year. But Destroy All Humans 2 Reprobed is a extremely good remaking of that game. They use all of the original dialogue, but it's very crisp and sounds a lot better than it did in the first Destroy All Humans remake. But then they also add in other stuff to the story. It just doesn't involve any dialogue. It's a lot of sound effects and stuff like that, but it fleshes out stuff and a lot of the comedy hits. And Destroy All Humans 2 is a really cool game. And I got to see Coyote Bongwater again after some like over a decade thinking about Coyote Bongwater.
I was gonna say that name has lived rent free in my head for like the better part of my life.
Yeah, it's if it's a really good way to play the Destroy All Humans games, and I think that they actually still hold up fairly decently. They do a couple gameplay tweaks that are for the better, and it's a totally solid way to play those games. But it's been a weak year for remasters and ports. Ryan, what is your number three?
My number three is my number three because I'm not entirely sure if it counts because it's a sequel disguised as a remaster. It's the Stanley Parable.
I think that's fine.
It's like half of that game is a remaster, but then the back half of that game is a sequel. But I think that's cool. It's just like they added so much content to it that they just made a whole second game for it.
I will say, I totally just did not even approach the Stanley Parable this year because I thought it was a remaster, and I was like,
that's what they
that
want
came
you to
out
think.
too recently that I don't really feel a need to have a remaster of that game. I did not know that it was a sequel.
Yeah, they want you to think it's a remaster.
I like the jump.
They trick you. Yeah, I do too. They trick you because they make you for the most part, I think you can say if you've played it before, but like if you say you haven't played it before to like start over, you have to play through it like 4 or 5 times before that unlocks the sequel stuff.
Yeah.
Huh. That's cool.
It's good.
It's great.
It's good.
Jason, what is your number three?
I don't have one.
Fine. Then yours is the Klonoa remasters because
I heard of that. I've
now
no idea
because
what that even
now
is.
those are easier to get to if you want to play Klonoa. Lily, what is your number
those
three?
were like crazy.
I don't have
expensive
one.
Before.
Give me one.
Don't
you
just throw things out.
Give me a
Lily,
number three.
you are a huge fan of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure All-Star Battle Remastered, which is a
That sounds
bad JoJo
That sounds-
fighting game.
That sounds like
It's
a cringe thing to be a
it's a
huge fan of, but all
bad
right.
fucking fighting
I'll
game.
take it.
But
It's a
that
bad
I'm gonna
fighting
need
game.
another one of these. So,
But it's got good JoJo refs.
it's all JoJo
Well-
refs, and it's a terrible fighting game. But that PS3 copy's gotten very expensive.
I mean, okay.
Danny,
Yeah,
what's your number
sure.
three?
My number 2 is a game that I haven't played, but I don't have a number 3.
Your number three is
Also JoJo.
Pac-Man World.
Oh no. I'll put Atari 50 here.
At 3?
We'll talk about it. We'll get there.
I also haven't played it yet. So
Dan, you should fix that. We'll get there. Hunter, what's your number three?
Real quick, I need to look up what its full title is because I think it's
Oh
important.
no. God damn it.
because it's Tactics Ogre Reborn, which itself is a remake of a PSP game called Tactics Ogre Let Us Cling Together, which itself is a remake of an SNES or a PS1 game also called Tactics Ogre Let Us Cling Together. But
We need to go deeper.
We need to cling together.
Where's the volcano?
There's no power washing in this one, unfortunately. But it's like it's a tactic RPG. It's like Final Fantasy Tactics before Final Fantasy Tactics came out. The only problem is that it's got that awful smear pixel art when things zoom in. Like it's fine when it's normal, but every so often during a fight it'll like zoom in because characters are talking to each other and you can just see that awful gross smear and you're like, zoom back out. I don't care. But it's got like full voice acting and remixed soundtrack, and they changed some gameplay stuff.
I heard about this one because Tactics Ogre fans are all perverts and crazy, and everyone seemed really pissed off about this remake.
Yeah, that's what I heard, but I mean, I don't really care.
Yeah. So moving on to my number 2, they want you to say that this is a new game, that this is a sequel, but in my heart of hearts, after playing it for maybe 30, 40 hours, I cannot say that it is. This is like a reboot at best. But it is Overwatch 2. It is a mild update to Overwatch, but it does a very critical thing of making it 5v5 instead of 6v6. I seem to be the only person who is happy about this change, but it makes battles much snappier because you don't have 2 tanks floating around. This is also someone who has not played Overwatch for several years after really only playing it at launch, and I think that they have done a lot of neat things to that game, but I apparently am the only one who enjoys these changes. A lot of the entrenched players I play with have nothing but negative things to say about this game, but I'm having a good time with it. There is a new character who is a tall Australian lady with abs. That's something.
Yeah.
Her name's Junker
that's a big
Queen.
something.
Yeah.
Or Junk Queen. I don't remember.
No, it's Junker Queen. But it's
I will say about that game, it has attracted a new audience. Like I visited my cousin's kids, or my cousin over Thanksgiving, and his kids were very into Overwatch 2. So I think the re-release kind of was able to bring in a younger audience. That
it got me in. I was a lapsed player, and I've bought 2 battle passes now. Like they got their money out of me.
Yeah. It obviously
all they wanted.
Something, right?
Yeah,
it's still doing that.
The idea of calling it Overwatch 2 though is fucking insane. It is not a sequel. I refuse to acknowledge that as a new game. It can live in the remasters category because that's the best it's getting. Ryan, what's your number 2?
Oh, Dan, go ahead.
Just if I had known that was an option of calling a sequel a remake or a remaster, I would have put Overwatch 2 on this list. Because it's the same game. It's Overwatch.
Yeah.
But yeah.
No, it's day and night. You can play.
It's free to play now.
It's free to play.
Good.
And some Overwatch 1 maps are now nighttime maps.
And also you can't play Overwatch 1 anymore.
Yeah.
So
you have no
also,
choice.
It uses the same launcher as Overwatch 1. If you click on your Overwatch 1 icon, it launches Overwatch 2. It's the same fucking game. It's not a sequel. Ryan, what's your number 2?
The Pac-Man Museum.
Oh yeah.
Not the Pac-Man World one, but the one where you play like a bunch of the older games. I think it's cool to have a collection of those games. The way they set it up is like you like walk around like a little virtual museum, or not museum, arcade that you can like customize yourself. But the reason it's number 2, most Pac-Man games suck ass. They all suck. Except the original Pac-Man and a couple other ones here and there.
But it's a Pac-Man, really great game.
It's a really cool collection of a lot of really shitty
games.
You
just named every Pac-Man game. What are the bad ones?
Pac World.
Yeah, well, there's Pac-Man 2. There's
Pac-Man Versus. Like, I mean, Pac-Man Championship Edition whips ass.
Yeah. But there's a lot of like really obscure like arcade ones where you got to do a bunch of different stuff, and it's like this isn't a fun twist on Pac-Man.
Jason just booted up the wiki.
Yeah. There's a lot of Pac-Man
the only
games.
Like non just Pac-Man game I had ever really seen. It was like Pac World. Was that a PS1 game?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
Those
had that
also
on
got
the
remasters
PS1.
this year, though.
Which I played. It's fucking terrible.
Mm.
It's not a good remaster either.
Wasn't there a Pac-Man kart racing game? Or am I
Yeah.
thinking of that M&M's
Pac-Man
kart
is
racer?
in Mario Kart in the arcade one.
Yeah,
there
I
was
knew that.
Namco
also-
put that out.
There's also a, I think, Pac-Man and the Ghostly Adventures kart racer.
You sure that sounds right? Jason, what's your number 2?
My number 2.
If you don't say anything, I've got one lined up.
No, I have one. I played a total of 2 games for this category this year, so my top 2 is 2 games I played. So my number 2 was I briefly played the Chrono Cross PS5, PS4 release.
Weird.
What?
Jason
Why?
with the fucking curveball again.
So I've never truly played that game, but I played it at my uncle's PlayStation when I was a little kid. So like he would just let me like do some of the battles while he was playing. Um, but so like I remember playing it, I remember the like general settings and some of the characters. So I just kind of it wasn't very expensive to just get the digital download. So I downloaded, I played maybe 3 or 4 hours of it over the course of a week, and it just didn't really grip me beyond the little nostalgia hit.
It's
just
not
a
the good
little,
Chrono game.
It's
was
just a
gonna
little
say
too. I mean, it's old and simple and slow. Like I think I would be interested to follow the story if I knew it was like maybe a 10-hour playthrough, but I'm not gonna
Nope, it's
put
a
a bunch of time into
JRPG.
that.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's the one Chrono game everybody hates.
See, I've never played Chrono Trigger.
That's the one everyone loves.
Yeah.
I
There's
like
only
Radiant
2 of them.
Historia.
Lily, what is your number 2?
You tell me, Dash.
You like the Crisis Core remake, the Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core remake.
Yeah,
They
that
took a
shit was
PSP game
banging.
and then they put it on to modern consoles. Danny, what's your
Yeah,
number 2?
that was
Me,
dope.
Gaganga.
So my number 2 is another game in my backlog. They're both just sitting right by my Switch. Is Live Alive. It looks real good. It is. I love JRPGs. So I'm excited to get to that one.
I played very little of that game, but I am just happy anytime a really obscure game is getting ported over into like it's something that never came to the West before. I am
Mhm.
happy that that game was chosen, even though it is super not my thing.
Other 3 next.
Yep, never ever. Hunter, what's your number 2?
My number 2 is Persona 5 Royal on PC.
A port of a port of an update.
Yep.
Still counts.
It's
Port of a
run
port.
surprisingly well on PC, which I mean, I guess it shouldn't be that surprising. Persona 3 or Persona 5 was a PS3 game. But I don't know, they actually did a pretty good
Yep.
job with I mean, I never played Royal, so I'm not used to all the changes, like getting a worse battle song and just all the costumes and shit.
Royal, like I know I talked about Royal the year it came out for PS4. Royal does a lot of really good gameplay enhancements. Specifically, they fix guns, amongst other things.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is the ideal way to play that game for sure. And this is coming from someone who does really like Persona 5 but hates JRPGs. So yeah, it's
Grey
nice
Owl
that
with
more people can play
cheese.
that. And it's on Game Pass, which is really cool. Happy to hear that. So my number 1 is the only actual like good remaster that elicits emotional response from me,
Mine's
and
the
I would
same
like
one.
to talk about Atari 50.
Okay.
Atari 50 is debatably the greatest like collection of something I have ever played as a video game. It sets the bar for what I hope all of these things will be in the future. It's from Digital Eclipse, who's done like other things. Like they've done the remasters of like a lot of the SNK games, of like The Lion King, DuckTales, a few different kind of older games. But this is so good. They get a bunch. It's an interactive museum, really. Like they get a bunch of like interviews with people who worked on these games, like made them, and I think it's really cool to get in and do this before a lot of them start dying. But you get to see these interviews and they'll be talking about making a game, and then you can just hop right in and play that game. And yeah, a lot of the games, most of them in fact, are fucking terrible because Atari games aren't actually that good. But the amount of work and cool, like this makes you give a shit about Atari games. And I can only imagine how cool this would be if they were to take this treatment onto something I actually gave a shit about. Like if they could do something for like Midway or something, it'd be fucking incredible.
That'd be sick.
Yeah,
Play
that was
Atari 50.
that was
It
the
rules.
that was the big reason I didn't get to it even when you said it was so good. It's because I looked up the list of games and I was like, I know what three of those are.
Dog shit. Just most of the games are fucking awful. But
Yeah, like
What
I had
adventure?
I had a Namco museum on my PS2 and that was full of really fun old games.
Yeah, but
Namco
these are
would be
even
another one
older.
that I would love
Yeah.
to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ditto what Dash said.
Atari 50
Atari
fucking
50.
rules. Jason,
I
what's your
think
number
that's
one?
what they should be doing with remasters and stuff like this, is like really dig in and cash in on the like the nostalgia or the historical factor of it. I think that's just a really, really cool way to do it.
And that same studio put out something this year for like a bunch of the Ninja Turtles games also, and it's not quite as well done as the Atari one, but it has a ton of those like bonus features and like promotional materials, things like that.
I think those bonus features are really underutilized in games. Like how you describe it kind of reminds me of in the Lord of the Rings video games for like the Two Towers and the Return of the King. They had these little like side things that you could unlock as you played through, and they were interviews with people who created the movie and then also who were involved in the game development. And I it was an element of those games that I thoroughly enjoyed, and I think preserving the like creative process through those interviews is really valuable and underutilized in games.
Yeah,
Back
one of my
when video
favorite
games had soul.
one of my favorite things about the Ratchet and Clank games is finding the like Insomniac Museum and just seeing like, behind the curtain a little bit.
Jason, what's your number one?
My number one is they gave Fall Guys a PS5 version, and I got really into it for like a month.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Lily, what's
enough.
your number one?
My number one was The Witcher 3
Legally in the rules.
next
Yeah,
gen update.
That it's a good update. I've been waiting years for it, and it finally happened.
He's gonna beat that Griffin again.
I did.
Nope, I already dropped it.
Oh, I made it further than I did the first few times I tried to pick it up. I'm having a good time with it. I don't know, it's kind of filling the Skyrim void of like when I'm in the mood for something like that, I can kind of have a similar experience without the Bethesda experience at the same time, because I'm over it. I'm bugs are not features. If they are, I don't want them. So like, just
Yeah, it would be cool if a studio with a ton of money behind it produced games that functioned. I think that would be a really cool thing.
that'd be great.
Yeah, CD
But in
Projekt
the
Red would
meantime-
never do that.
But yeah, so that was my number one. I put like maybe 5 hours into it, but I'm
I
having
meant to
more
try
fun than
it.
I ever have before with it.
I meant to try it, and then the year ended, and now that it's not a 2022 game, I'm not gonna play it.
It's the best way to play that very good game if you're
They'll need to put out a remaster of it again this year, then I'll play it.
It's cool, Jason. It's only like 300 to 400 hours worth of content.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
They're gonna remaster it again for the Switch.
Danny, what's your number one?
My number one is Persona 5 Royal. I plugged in over 140 hours into that game. It's phenomenal. Yeah.
I just can't buy it.
You don't have to. It's on Game Pass. You can get it for free.
Fuck
Yeah.
off.
You knew what he meant, and you goddamn said it anyway.
Xbox should start paying us for how much we shill Game Pass to each other.
As soon as it stops
I
being the
have
best
Game
deal
Pass.
in the biz. Jason, I hate JRPGs. It's one of the few that's worth it.
It is.
I just can't think of doing 140 hours of anything.
Okay, that's too many hours.
To be fair, I sat and just listened to the voice acting because I had like a nostalgia for the original Persona 5 release. I like enjoy those voice actors, even if it's kind of cheesy sometimes. So I didn't just like read through the dialogue and go through. I could have dropped a good like 40 hours of
It's
just listening to the game.
it's
You just
more
turn the game
realistic
on
to
to
say
go to
that that
bed.
game is 80 or 90 hours, and I realize that's not much better, but
Yeah. If you can skip cutscenes, there's a lot of dialogue that is just kind of filler. But I chose to listen to it. Another thing that I really like that they did is that they there was a lot of kind of empty space in the original Persona 5, whereas so like the game is broken up into like you have segments of each day that you can do things, and in the original Persona 5 there were a lot of days that just got kind of skipped, where it's like, oh yeah, nothing story wise happens here and we're not
and your
gonna like
cat won't let you go out at night.
right. But in Persona 5 Royal, uh every day is playable. You can get something done each day, and like the game is a, a lot about like how to maximize the utilization of your time, and Persona 5 Royal lets you maximize that.
Yeah.
Um,
It fixes so many of the problems that the original release had. It's such a good update.
Like one
Also-
of the big fixes I think they did. Dash, you mentioned guns earlier, but you didn't mention that there's a feature in the game or a mechanic called baton pass, where you hit an enemy's weakness and then you can you get an extra turn. You can now pass this extra turn to a different ally, and then that boosts their damage or healing for that.
Yeah.
And then if they hit they can baton pass to everyone in your party. It used to be in the original release, you had to get to like, I think you just had to start their social link or something, and then they could baton pass, which made it so like you can't start a party member's social link until after the dungeon you get them. So if you wanted to use this new party member you got, you are actively like nerfing yourself, because then you just can't baton pass with them. In Royal, they made it that so you can baton pass immediately.
They also made it so that you could skip battles without with lower level enemies without foregoing gaining experience, which was a nice little touch. In the original game, if you're running and you collide with a weaker enemy, you'll, instead of going through the kind of lengthy battle sequence, you would just kind of cut them down, and there'd be a nice splashy like screen that happens. But in the original game, you would not be able to, like, you wouldn't get any funds or experience from cutting down your enemies like that. But in Persona 5 Royal, you do, so you can continue to grind it for those very high level cool personas while also speeding through the game.
So time to get on that,
Royal,
Jason.
very good way to play that game. Hunter, what is your number one?
Real quick, one last thing about Persona. Jason, if you really cared, it comes with all the DLC, which includes like a level 95 Persona you can summon for free, and you could just speed run through the game if you really cared.
I feel like, what are you doing at that point, though?
Yeah. I mean, you say that, you played Persona 4 on very easy. That game's easier than Persona 5.
Dash played Persona 4 with Coil.
Yeah.
My number one is Live Alive, because I really liked that when I played it on the SNES emulator, because it was Japan only. And then I don't know why they even decided to remaster it.
Yeah, I feel like that's one of those ones I haven't even heard like of the cult following for that one.
There were so many better options.
Like, I'm totally down for it. I loved that they did it, especially because there are a lot of neat moments in it that I will only talk about one when we get to that category. But like, it's split up to different timelines. Like, there's a prehistory timeline where you play as a caveman. There's a Wild West one. There is a near future where you play as like a hot-blooded anime protagonist guy. There's the the far future where you play as the little robot with the hat that Dash showed off earlier. And
every time you say, immediately for some reason was connecting it with Nier Automata. And I
Mm.
was like, can't be. That can't be.
And then there's I think one of my favorite ones overall is the Imperial China one, where you start as like this ancient kung fu master, and you're like, I'm getting pretty old. I should find a disciple. And so you just like go around for a little bit, and you find 3 people, and then you spend the next while training them, and whoever you end up training the most actually becomes your successor. Because spoilers, I'm not going to say it because Danny hasn't played it yet, but maybe something bad happens.
Maybe something
Oh.
bad happens. So,
In a video game?
Never.
It's a good year for JRPG remasters, it seems. Overall, really shitty year for remasters and ports, though. But 2023 is going to be one of the best remasters or ports year we've ever had. That's how these things go. I don't think anyone's got any shout outs, but with that, that will draw us to a close. And the next episode is going to be something. But I don't know what that is at this time. But thank you for sitting with
Yes,
us
you do.
to talk about JRPGs for a little bit. Bye bye.